Hi, everyone. This is Pam Reese with Adventures in Aging. And again, I'm here with my good friend,
Gary Vandenberg. Bam, it's great to be back. And you're my good friend, too. I need to say that more often.
Thank you, Gary.
What is today's topic?
So today we're going to talk about ageism. So the title is, What's Age Got to Do with It?
What's age got to do with it, right? All kinds of ages. Well, before we get into it, I want to thank our sponsors, Stridelight.net. Stridelight provides quality diabetic shoes, custom inserts, orthotics, all lower extremity needs. For over 20 years, they've been providing quality feet-related products. Please mention Stridelight to your doctor or podiatrist for the best solution for your feet. How are your feet?
You know what? So far, so good. I'm not there yet. I'm sure it's coming.
Okay, great. So what's age got to do with it?
Yeah, so ageism, we've all heard of that. It's a very stereotypical, more or less a discrimination against groups of older age.
Older age.
Yeah.
Anymore, though, and I think we'll dabble into this, I think it may have to do with younger people, too, a little.
So I'm hearing about that, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But actually, this term was coined, did you know, in 1969.
No, I didn't. In fact, I think I've mentioned in an earlier podcast that about 10 years later, I wrote a paper on ageism and got an F on it.
Really?
In college, because the professor said that word didn't exist. I guess it existed for 10 years.
Wow. How did you even know to choose that topic at that time?
I was getting into gerontology, and that was of interest to me, and it just seemed like an easy topic at that point. But no, so it's been around for a long time, that phrase. So
you were saying that anymore, ageism isn't just about seniors, even though we're familiar with that in that sometimes a company doesn't want to hire someone over 55, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's, and they've brought in some new laws. I know people over 40, when they get, laid off or terminated, there's a whole process because of age. So there are some regulations coming in over it. But I'm sure there's other kinds of things related to ageism, too.
Oh, yeah. So there is a prejudice and for lack of a better word, discrimination against also adolescents and children. And this would involve such as denying them certain rights, usually reserved for adults, such as the right to vote, run for political office, etc. But we could also say that has to do with maturity.
Yeah. Well, and it's changed. When I was 18, you could buy alcohol, right? And now it's 21. So things do change over time. I'm not sure what cigarettes were, but I think they went up over the years also, haven't they?
Sure. It all has. But there's also groups that talk about ignoring younger ideas coming from, let's say, a 16 or 17-year-old.
Whippersnappers. Right?
Yeah. They don't know what they don't know, right? Yeah, they're too young.
They haven't had the life experiences is what's often thrown out there. But you stop and think, people, and we've talked about this before, people that are really smart sometimes do horrible in school, right? People like Einstein and different people that you end up reading their life stories, and they were total failure in school because I think they were held back because of age a little bit.
Well, also there's that theory of the smarter you are, the less common sense you have. And is that a true statement? I don't know.
All you think about is Doogie Howser. Do you remember Doogie?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love that show. I love that show.
But there's people that are smart, and I see them on television every once in a while. They're 12 years old, and they're getting their college degrees and those types of things. They're great musicians, have talent. Some of them have it when they're 10 years old.
There are certainly younger people with a high IQ, but could they function in society alone? That's the other question.
Yeah.
So there are some other discriminatory types of activity that takes place towards different groups due to the ageism. And one, get this, fear of death and the fear of disability and dependence, which can be a major cause of ageism.
Yeah, I think people see themselves as, I don't want to accept that. I don't want to be there.
Yeah, so and I don't want to be around anyone who is dying or anyone that is in a bad health condition.
Yeah, okay.
Another part of this is called adultism.
Adultism.
Yes.
It's isms.
There's isms for everything. And
What is that?
this is a predisposition towards adults who it's seen as being a bias against children, youth, anyone young who are not addressed or viewed as adults.
Gosh, when I was growing up, I know we had some older neighbor gentleman, and he hated kids.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Oh, he couldn't stand kids being on his property, walking around. He just didn't like it.
So do you feel that that's a true feeling, or are some people just afraid of responsibility or how they would act around children? Because I've heard of people, never known anyone who does not want to be around kids.
Wow. Yeah.
And thank goodness they never had any.
Yeah, he was a grumpy old man. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Bad, but that's what he was.
Then there's adultocracy. Have you ever heard of that?
I can't even say it. Adultocracy.
Adultocracy. And that's a social type of situation which defines maturity and immaturity. And so what this does is it places adults in a dominant position over young people. And it happens both theoretically and practically.
Right. Well, there are people that have adult bodies that act immature, right?
Oh, I know many adults that are super immature. Don't you?
Yeah, like grow up, right?
Yeah, like why haven't we grown up yet?
Yeah, and they act young and they act young in a certain way. It's almost like a maturity type of thing.
So what's that old jingle or song? I don't want to grow up. Right? I mean, some people, you say that at a certain age, right?
Right.
Everyone wants to turn 18 or 21. And then once you do, you're done.
You're done.
Yeah. No one says, I can't wait to be 45.
Really.
So another one is gerontocracy.
Another crassy, right?
Right. And this is, it probably, we would see this in some other countries where you have rulers that have been in their ruling position for years and years and years, and they're never replaced until death. And so you have some rulers that might live to be 100, but you can never replace them.
Right. Well, sometimes if you think about even our own Supreme Court, they're there for life, right? Which would mean they tend to be older people, men and women, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes senators and congressmen are older, aren't they? And if the average age is in 30s, we'll say, in the United States, and you've got people representing you and they're in their 70s or 80s,
right?
Yeah, there is a little bit of a gap there.
So another situation, and I'm not sure I can pronounce it correctly, but I'm going to give it a good try. Phaedophobia. Phaedophobia is the fear, and we talked a little bit about this. This is of infants and children. So we have adultism, where people have a bias against children, and then we have phaedophobia, which is the fear.
Of what? Little kids? Infants?
Fear of kids.
Well, fear of dropping them.
Well, there's that.
Their heads falling off. I've had that when I held a brand new baby. Oh, no.
And not get into a shaken baby syndrome type of situation.
Yeah. No, I didn't know there was such a phobia. Is there any other phobias?
Yeah, so here's another one. Oh my, Gary, let me attempt this. Ephebophobia, which is the fear of youth, fear of teenagers.
Oh, and I was thinking, haven't you ever seen like a little group of teenagers, and there are people that kind of
shy away.
They get scared. They're like, they're going to come over and, mug us or something.
Or
like
if you're an elderly person and you're walking down the street or to your car, an elderly person can feel very vulnerable. So anyone younger than them approaching them can be a fearful situation.
Yeah, that's a good phobia.
So gerontophobia, the fear of elderly people.
Isn't that something? What comes to mind when you say that? Right when I started in nursing homes many, many years ago, we had school kids coming in. I think these were teenagers, in fact, coming for a day at the nursing home, visiting the residents. It was so nice. And I never forget this one girl. She kind of spazzed out and kind of fell on the ground. She was having a terrible issue there. And in talking with her, the teacher, whoever was with her, it turns out she had that. She had some kind of an overwhelming phobia against hanging out with older people. And
so would she actually get the signs and symptoms of a phobia, the rapid heart rate, the short of breath, the panic type?
I have a phobia. You ever hear about my phobia?
No, what's your phobia?
Sunflowers. Did you ever know that?
Gary, I think in passing you may have mentioned this before, and I know I didn't believe
when I
you.
was little, I got stuck in a sunflower field at Aunt Edith's farm. And
What?
yeah, we were playing hide and seek in the cornfields, and next thing you know, I'm out in the sunflower patch, and there was acres of these things.
I think that's beautiful.
And ever since then, I mean, I'm a little better these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'd have like a physical reaction when you're around things.
So if we were to place you in a sunflower patch today,
Yeah, I'd freak out. I'd totally lose it. You know,
Really?
The funny thing is, my kids have grown sunflowers every year. I've brought that up. They've always enjoyed growing sunflowers and watching me freak out around them. So,
oh my gosh.
isn't that hilarious?
So, phobias is a huge discussion.
There's clowns too, but that's a whole different issue.
You know what? I kind of have a phobia about clowns myself. I used to like them when I was younger, and then when I got older, I decided no.
Well, when you think about younger people, though, what's always fascinated me was this concept that's called a minimum age.
Okay.
When countries have a minimum age, you can do things. You brought up about driving and about smoking cigarettes and those types of things. But when you really stop and think about it, and there was a quote, this guy's name is Mike Males, I hope I didn't butcher that, a country that demands minimum ages is actually admitting that its adults are poor models for young people. And if that is the case, real grown-ups address unhealthy adult behaviors first. And when you stop and think about it, so if a country is raising that age of alcohol, what they're really saying is we're totally out of control as adults with alcohol. That's what it's trying to say.
So the younger you are, the more out of control you would be?
No. I think it's just an interesting thing that sometimes part of the effects of ageism is, as you said earlier, how you see yourself growing older, and you actually start taking these things into consideration. One thing that jumped out when we were looking at this subject was something called the Snow White syndrome.
I've heard of this.
Well, what do you think it is? The Snow White
Mirror,
syndrome?
mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all?
Yeah, and there's a couple things in that one was dealing with the evil queen, right?
Always the evil queen.
And the evil queen is symbolizing old women, isn't it? An old.
For sure, right. Yes. I'm getting a vision in my mind of the movie.
Right, and then the mirror is symbolizing
youth and beauty.
Yeah, isn't that something? Very deep in how that does. But somehow all these types of stereotypes kind of begin with the idea of there's people that are older and younger as being seen as incompetent or useless. Isn't that something that when you have an age limit on certain things, you're not useful till you hit a certain age?
Right.
Like a job.
But the other side of that, and I just have to keep going back, is, parents are responsible for their children until they're 18 years old.
Right. But there's times, and you think about the Industrial Revolution. You remember those pictures? They had little kids. They were like 6 years old, 10 years old, and they're in the mines working at stuff. Right?
So I couldn't imagine my grandchildren at that age, and they are that age, having that responsibilities. And I know that we worry about safety, right? Because they don't have those judgment skills.
So that there must have been something in the mindset at that time of saying they're too young then, right? You're too young to work. And so the age limit started going up and up until you had to be like 15 or 16 years old. One thing that struck me, though, and it's all tied in with this ageism a little bit, is also how much public money is spent on older people versus younger people. Isn't that something?
Well, that is very true.
And how
you reach different benefits.
I'm convinced that the money a younger person's putting into Social Security is probably being taken out this afternoon by someone older in Social Security.
And then in theory, the money those younger people are putting in, right?
Yeah, it should be there.
Will serve someone else.
But according to Forbes magazine, in the next 10 years, over half the United States budget, half of the U.S. budget, will be spent on older adults. So stop and think about that the younger people are going to have to pay for all the older people when it happens. Well, age discrimination, as I said, occurs when people are younger, too. In fact, there was a study over in England of over 4,000 children and asked about in perceptions that they might have if they were biased about anything or, had any discrimination. 6% said, they were discriminated because they were sexual orientation, male, female, whatever it might be. 11% because of race. 27% said they may have been discriminated. These are children again, because of race. They're 27%. But guess what percentage reported being discriminated against because of their age? Any guesses?
No, what is it?
It was like 43%.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's multiples. That's all those other ones combined. Can you believe that? That their age had been that big of a factor in things. And when you stop and think about this minimum age thing, I bring about alcohol, right?
Yep.
But there's other things like getting married.
Right. Oh, my gosh, Gary. So did you know that there are today states that allow 15-year-olds to marry, that will issue a license?
I kind of do. For some reason, I think of some states that have said that, have done that.
And for me, that's almost abuse. That's almost child abuse.
Wow. But I think it's been around for a long time in those different states there. But, even crazy things like spray paint. There's certain things, and model glue, I guess, if you build a model.
Well, those have turned into hallucinogens.
And not good things to do.
Right.
Yeah. But believe it or not, like guns comes to mind.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
And did you know it is legal in 30 states for a 12-year-old to buy a rifle or shotgun?
That is unconscionable.
30 states.
What do you think of that?
I'm sure it's tied in with hunting, don't you think? You can get a hunting license and you can get a gun.
I'm taken back because I'm just trying to think this through.
Isn't it? And there are some states that you don't have any age requirements, which is mind-boggling.
So I know a lot of dads will take their sons or their daughters hunting.
Oh, it's their culture. It's
their culture. It's what they do. It's how they grew up. And I don't see a thing wrong with that personally. Mm-hmm. I feel they're being supervised, and I feel there's a responsible, mature person with them. But honestly, Gary, I can't imagine a 12-year-old just walking around with a gun unsupervised. Mm. But you say it's legal in 30 states.
Yeah, it is mind-boggling. But there's other things also to like access to health care, even going to movies. Did you ever go to an R-rated movie?
Yes, and then there's PG-13 and all of that. Yes.
Oh, my gosh. And then, even joining the armed forces.
Right.
The age you have to be at.
You can fight for your country, but you can't vote.
And I remember when Vietnam was around. I was a younger kid, but I do remember this kind of statistic coming up, and that's that people could go and fight in Vietnam, but when they came back, many of them couldn't smoke, couldn't vote. They weren't old enough to vote or smoke or have
right.
alcohol.
That's right.
And so some of those laws obviously changed at that time, but that was always shocking.
And who sets these, right? What is the criteria to set an age limit?
Yeah, well, and that's why I'm saying that the original phrase was the concept that when a country sets an age limit, they're really saying we as adults don't know how to control ourselves. That's what they're trying to say. Because when you stop and think about it, if somebody was mature in their mind at 12, yeah, maybe they could drive a car.
So what about you? When you think back to being 12 years old,
right.
Did you feel you were mature enough to take on a higher responsibility in life?
I thought I could get a job when I was younger than 16.
And I did. I worked when I was 14. I had a work permit. My parents took me to work, right. And I felt responsible.
But what's weird is when I was doing some research on this. See, that's part of discrimination too. You could hire kids younger, but you can pay them less.
You can. Well,
why?
You know why?
Why shouldn't they get the same?
Because they're being supported by their parents. Well, they're being supported by someone else.
This all ties together as to the whole concept of saying, when you go to a job, do you have a husband? Does he have benefits? Why do we need to give you benefits, right? Those types of things.
Yeah, these are thought-provoking statements.
You're just here for the summer, you get tips,
So I still got to believe that the theory with that is children get spending money. So if I'm 14 years old and I have a goal, there's something I want to buy presents for Christmas. Maybe mom and dad say, hey, you got to, buy your own lunch at school, which I think would be kind of wrong. Do you think that's wrong?
When I went to school, lunches are pretty inexpensive. So,
okay.
And all I remember is I think we would get the exact amount in our allowance to cover lunches.
Right.
There wasn't much on top of that. The reason I was tying that in, and we'll get into other things here, but if you stop and think about it, when you think about the strict United States actually has one of the strictest minimum age laws for drinking. Did you know that?
I did not.
But in the Western world, we're like the second highest alcohol abuse death rate, the United States.
So the comments that go along with that are, when you don't expose children, now this is controversial as well, if you shelter them from life, right?
Right.
Are they more curious to experience those parts of life you're sheltering them from?
Yeah, I think that people that are younger and they have a predisposition, or is that what they call that, to alcohol or alcohol
Sure.
abuse, yeah, they're going to find a way before they're 21 to do these things. But it's just interesting. Finland's the worst, by the way, whatever I was reading, and then we're like number 2 when it comes to alcohol abuse deaths. The other thing is that the drinking ages, they raise that. And you remember, you were in that same cohort as
Yep,
I am.
I was.
Being 18 or 19. Well, they started raising it, got it up to 21. Well, what's interesting as you dive into this, I think this was in California and other places, that actually drunk, the age, when you're 18, they're like car accidents and things didn't get worse. But guess what got worse was the fact that whatever age you set it at, if you're at 21, then those between 21 and 24 had the problems.
Right. So I remember being in college, and that was back when the drinking age limit was lower. It was 18 years old. And I had a lot of friends, was in a lot of different groups, went to different parties. And I don't remember ever having someone turn 21 and that person drinking 21 shots or 21 bottles of something and passing out and becoming almost alcohol poisoned.
On their 21st birthday.
Yeah, I don't.
There's kind of a blurry line there, right?
Yeah, I don't remember seeing that. And I know that today, more kids are so anxious to turn 21 and not in the right way, right? Not to be responsible. And is there something to the fact that, why make something so restrictive that you look for an age to make it overdone?
Well, the other thing is the teen driving laws. Now, everyone, when I was turned 16 to get my driver's license, believe it or not, my niece, she was telling me the other day, she's so excited to get her temporary. I think she's going to be like 15 and a half.
That's what it is now. Yes.
But in some states, they've been pushing that older, right? Getting people up to be 18 years old before you get a driver's license type of thing. And what, again, they found, this was in California as an example, 18 and older, with the new laws, actually they are in higher traffic deaths than the younger people. So again, as they keep moving these ages up, it doesn't really solve the problem.
There's a point where you delay maturity and you delay responsibility, right?
Yeah. Delay responsibility.
You delay responsibility.
We could have a whole episode on that at one of these future podcasts.
Right. And I think some of the problems that we see on and off today might be due to a delay in responsibility.
Yeah. I think I brought this up before. I acted like I couldn't start the dishwasher and the washing machine. That's probably delayed responsibility.
That's just knowing that if I say this, that no one's going to make me do it.
I got away with it for many years there.
So talk about driving for a minute. Do you remember going way back in our lives? My mom would literally take me on a back road and let me drive at 14.
Oh, no, I never got that.
You didn't get to do that?
I was a city kid. No. Did you stay out of the ditches?
Oh, my gosh, I was an excellent driver.
Why would she be teaching you this? Just in case?
I don't know. Was it my mom was weird? But honest to goodness, we would go for rides, and on a back road, I'd say, "Mom, can I drive?" And next thing you know, I'm driving, illegally, but I learned to drive at a much earlier age.
I think driving in my life, if you were to prioritize one of the great things, it was when I got my driver's license. I think that to me symbolized the bigger world.
That was freedom.
That was absolute freedom and such. Well, it's interesting as we talk about ageism. As you get older, in older adults, they did a research study. I find this kind of fascinating. They actually took a group of residents from China. Then they took people from North America that were deaf, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
And then a group of North Americans that were able to hear, and they put them in situations exposing them to different situations. And what they found was that the gap in the scores between the old and the young North Americans with normal hearing were double those of the deaf Americans when it came to perceptions of ageism. And also it was like, I think the number was something like 5 times that of Chinese.
Wow.
People from China. And because it's how the society communicates it. Isn't it interesting?
No, I agree with that. I agree with that.
And when you stop and think about the main things that jump out to me when I think about ageism, obviously, I think the big one that jumps out is the one that deals with the media, right? Advertising.
For sure.
And when you stop and think about the movies and what's coming up now these days is as actors are getting older. I didn't realize this. Remember, was it Pierce Bronson? Is that his name?
Yeah, 007 and
yeah. They
Bronson.
They would not let him continue to be 007
because he was too old.
Right. Isn't that crazy?
But we all love Sean Connery as 007.
Well, I don't think he was old when he was.
Well, he was older, and we'd probably still.
Isn't that something?
Like that, yes.
And also, believe it or not, Madonna, the actress, when she turned 50, her record started being played less. Isn't that something? They actually found that out. And Kim Cattrall, she was in Sex and the City again. You know, she brought up issues about ageism in Hollywood and such like that. And it's really something how that whole perception, you know, when you think about the older actors and actresses, you know, many times they're either really strict individuals,
sure,
right? Like a judge or somebody seriously, or else they're total goofballs.
Yeah. So these actors and actresses go from playing the lead, the beautiful lead, to being the grandma.
Oh yeah, I've seen
right?
that. Haven't you seen that?
Yes.
I've seen that in recent years. I go, hey, she used to be the teenage girl. Now she's like the mom.
Right.
What is going on?
Do you ever even think that about yourself? No. Or do you hear others say that? Or you don't put yourself in that place?
I don't go there, but I'm starting to say, I go, who is that actress? And I look her up. Hey, she was in Back to the Future. You know, what is she doing now? She's the mom. She's the grandma.
That's
you know,
right.
That? And isn't that something how that kind of goes? And then the other type of discrimination I think comes up is employment. And we kind of talked a little bit about
this one bothers me.
About, you know, the age, the minimum age of getting a job, getting benefits, different things like that. But also at the other end is the mandatory requirement or retirement. And that's changed over the years, but in certain areas, you know, of government, it's still they hit a point where you're hitting that limit.
Or what about the downsizing? And Gary, if you're 61 and you have 4 or 5 more years you want to work, but someone comes to you and says, we'd like to offer you,
buy you out. I know
early retirement.
That and
I know a lot of people that have had that.
More appealing to them because, hey, you know, they're going to pick up other benefits now, right? But if you're 30 or 40 and someone comes to buy you out, I don't know. You know what? It's a different kind of world.
And is it true? I mean, do you really believe someone 30 years old can outwork you? No, I suppose if you had a very physical job, maybe they can.
Yeah, my little landscaper son, he outworks me hard there when I'm pushing the wheelbarrow.
But what about going and applying for a position that you have done for 35 years? You know it in and out.
Right.
And you're applying, and maybe because of their what do you call that when a company has to accept so many different applications to avoid discrimination?
Yeah, well, they're trying to get diversity.
Yes, and so they, as a courtesy, right?
Oh yeah,
they bring you in to interview you. You know all the answers. You know what to do, but they go that different direction. Because they would much rather hire that 32-year-old that's energetic
less,
and
sometimes they can pay them less.
Yeah,
right? If somebody believe me, I've been in that spot dozens times, right? And yeah, they love you during the interview. You had everything. You bring in the skill set. You're bringing the experience. You're bringing the positive attitude, and then later you find out they hired somebody half your age almost.
Right.
That because they wanted pay less. They wanted somebody more perky, I guess, or somebody.
Sure.
And, it's their call as to how that goes. But, I think there is definitely and I kind of denied that, to be honest, over the years. I didn't give it much thought. But then there is a perception. It goes back to that ageism of if you're older, you're gonna be slower. How's that sound? You're not going to catch on to technology. You're going to be the person that everyone's going to say, oh, he doesn't even use email or something goofy like that.
No, that's correct. And even another thought is, well, you're going to bring that old process to our organization, right? You're going to bring, you don't have new and creative, innovative ideas.
Yeah, that's, and as such. Wow, there goes some ringing of the bell.
We got all kinds of stuff going on.
5-minute notice there?
Yeah, who knows?
But when you stop and think about, again, and we talked a little bit about it in the government and different areas, and you know, I think when I was younger, I'm not sure if they changed it, but you couldn't be a, what do you call it, a air traffic controller at a certain age. Did you know that?
I did not. Is that
because of the stress involved in the age, and maybe that's changed over the years. But and as I said earlier, you know, some different things, including I read an article preparing for this in the Catholic Church. There's actually some rules that came out about the age of, you know, when you reach the age of 80, you could not be a new pope at some point. Now, these things may have changed, but isn't that crazy that at some point that they said it? That organizations would say, at a certain age, you're too old to do something.
Yes.
And we've kind of touched a little bit about that. So what are the solutions? The solutions that come to mind? You know, one thing that, and I had to go back in history and kind of look as to when this all happened, but did you ever hear the newsboy strike of 1899?
No. Tell us about that.
The newsboy
of
strike.
1899.
In 1899, in the Northeast, the largest newspapers were targeted by the people that delivered those newspapers. You remember the kid that would have like the bag around?
Oh,
yeah.
My brothers were delivered newspapers.
Well,
they were absolutely that
this was
boy.
like 90 years before that.
Right, right.
Because apparently, you know, even though their circulation was, you know, 360,000 or 400,000 newspapers every day, these kids, they wanted to make a fair wage. They wanted to get more than 5 cents a day or something. Isn't that something? And that actually created kind of a stopping point saying, yeah, there should probably be a minimum wage that's tied in with this. And as you stop and think about it, you know, people that show more independence, more control in their lives, they kind of overcome some of these stereotypes, don't they?
I think that the older that you get, you do overcome some. I do.
And a couple of things that jumped out to me. One was, I think the most powerful thing was the person that started AARP. And I'm not a member of AARP, but I'm just
you
saying,
should be.
Probably should be.
Right.
But the phrase that their mission statement originated on was to empower people to choose how they live as they age.
And not have someone else choose for you.
Isn't it a strong thing?
That's strong. That's thought-provoking.
To empower people to choose how they live as they age. And I think that's probably why we are doing Adventures in Aging a little bit too.
Yeah, and another sad part about that is, you know, Gary, we all have moments of forgetfulness and we all have moments where we talk silly. Why is it okay for a 35-year-old to have those moments and everyone just blows it off? But when you're 65 and you have that same moment, well, you have a little bit of dementia, right? You have a little bit of senility coming on. And so just this is all very thought-provoking and some things to talk about.
And two last things, and then we'll wrap it up. One is, and I think this is a positive thing, that actually in certain states, and I think there's a number of states, I don't have them listed here, but that ageism is now a hate crime. Believe it or not, if you feel that somebody has, you know, hurt you
sure,
specifically because of your age, it falls into that category. That's something relatively new. And the last thing, and I think this is something our audience can think about later, is the solution to all of this, ageism, was really a study, and they did this in University of Barcelona. And what they did was they put grandparents and grandkids together.
Okay.
And they found that the longer they would spend time together, the different intergenerational ages, the less they would have this as a problem, ageism. The answer is hang out with people much younger or much older than you, and you won't have that predetermined bias.
I think there's a lot to be said for that, and I believe that to be true. Well, Gary, we have talked about as much of this as we can today, and I'll tell you what, we could probably go on all day.
Isn't it great? Yeah, there's a lot of subject matter there, and hopefully we're part of the solution.
Yeah, so wow, we have come to the end of our show today, and just want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in, sharing our podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you, and thank you again, and we'll see you next time.